Hi, I'm David Penn, research analyst with Finovate. Thank you for joining us for the Finovate FinTech Halftime Review. Courtesy of Jobs Ohio, this final presentation of our halftime review is fittingly about frontiers, specifically the new frontier of innovation, adaptation, and growth in America's heartland. With us today are three individuals who know this terrain quite well, and they will share their experiences and insights with us as pioneers of this emergent opportunity in the American Midwest. I'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, the work that they do, and then we'll get right started with our conversation for today. First, Wendy, if you could go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Wendy Buckowitz, Director of Strategic Innovation at the Cincinnati Insurance Companies. I came here, so I'm a transplant to Cincinnati. I'm not from here. I'm from the coast. I came here to take this incredible opportunity to stand up an innovation discipline at a fairly traditional, established insurance company that got its start here in the Midwest. And it's been an exciting time and an unexpected time for me here in Ohio. And I'm really excited to share more about it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Alex, yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Rouse. I'm a VP of Product at Upstart. Upstart is an AI technology company. We help banks apply AI in lending. I'm actually from Ohio, originally from Columbus, but spent about a decade on the West Coast, worked for Amazon and then a startup out there, and then relocated back to the Midwest to be closer to family. Yeah, that's my quick background.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And Jamie, yourself.
Yeah, Jamie Tim, Chief Delivery Officer for WillowTree. WillowTree is a digital consultancy. We help clients across the country and across verticals build mission-critical software for their teams and for their clients. I've been with the firm for almost 12 years. When I started with WillowTree, it was actually with the firm called Dynamit in Columbus, and there were 7 of us. And over time, we've grown and merged with WillowTree, and now the firm's about 700 people located in Columbus, Ohio, Durham, North Carolina, and Charlottesville, Virginia.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and get started with our discussion. I want to let everyone know that this is an interactive presentation. So if you have any questions or comments, your own experiences living, working, innovating in the Midwest, or thinking about it, please feel free to send those questions and comments to us, and we'll be happy to take them up toward the end of the program. Jamie, let's stay with you as we get our conversation started. Can you tell us a little bit about how and why your company decided to locate in the Midwest?
Yeah, so a part of the story was 2 of our founders were actually, from Ohio. And as part of kind of their upbringing and, going to school here, they built really strong relationship in the business community. And they found that talent and access to capital and a client base was really readily available in the city. And over time, as I mentioned, through the merger that we had with WillowTree, we found the same thing, that as we've grown, that the technology community, the availability of talent through the great university presence that we have here in Ohio and our other communities has just been fantastic for the growth and retention of our team.
Interesting, interesting. Alex, you have sort of an interesting backstory as an Ohioan. For yourself, how did you all find yourselves in Ohio and why?
Yeah, so our company was founded in San Mateo, so out in the Bay Area, by a handful of people from Google. And over the course of time, the company, began to grow. And what they found is that it was extremely difficult to compete for talent in the Bay Area. So, as a young startup, you're competing with the Apples and the Googles and Facebooks out there. And so the company, in 2019, the company really hit an inflection point and kind of came to the realization that to reach the aspirations that we had, to hire the people that we needed to grow to somewhere else. And so then the question was where. And so, we're an AI technology company, so we're of course took a very quantitative way to answer this question. And so we actually had our machine learning scientists build models that looked at the actual jobs that were available in a handful of different cities, and then the talent that was available, and sort of looked at a supply and demand ratio. And we were looking at cities that were generally from Chicago to Austin, St. Louis, Columbus, or a handful of cities sort of the middle of the country. in Ohio really ranked at the very top of that list. So it was a combination of seeing that there was talent here, that there was the university, so there's going to be people that we can hire kind of on a streaming basis, and then actually Jobs Ohio was a real big advantage as well. So they helped the team, helped us figure out in different sites and other different benefits. So sort of the combination of those three things, Columbus made it to the top of the list.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Wendy, about yourself, as a self-described transplant to the Midwest, what brought you and your company to this region?
Well, I would say our company is really a story of four local boys make good. So our company got founded in 1950. Four gentlemen who were all independent agents themselves. And if you don't know our industry, insurance has to be sold through an agent, and an independent agent is actually able to sell insurance from a number of companies. So these four local guys, I'll say their names because those are the names that matter to us, Bob Schiff and his brother Jack Schiff, Chester Field and Henry Turner, in 1950, had this really incredible idea that an insurance company that was founded by independent agents to serve independent agents could provide benefit to independent agents by limiting the number of them that they appointed in any given place to give them brand value. And then also those agents would really know the community as well, because at the time, that's how so much of the business was done. And they felt that understanding the communities, the individuals, and the businesses would help the carrier place the best risks. So it was kind of a win-win. And we really started as an Ohio-based company. So our local knowledge, our local relationships with those independent agents all really served as really the crucible for this company getting off the ground. And I think as we talk further, some of the more interesting questions is like, why have we stayed here, right? What has it meant for us to keep our company here and grow from there? And I'll look forward to chatting more about that later.
Yeah. Well, there's no time like the present, actually. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that, Wendy, and then let's stay with you. In terms of some of your observations, I really appreciate that sort of historical perspective you're able to provide. Bringing us up to the present, what would you say has worked well about being here in Ohio, and what have been some of the things that maybe have been more challenging?
I think that as we grew as a company, as we expanded out from this space, we also have part of our model that's really interesting and different from some of our competitors, is that we have our field sales staff are actually not just sales, they also are underwriters. So they are also making decisions about all new business, and they live and operate in local communities. So we started in Ohio and kind of spread out from there. And I think while we were a regional carrier, it was really easy for us to continue to get great talent. I think as we've become what some would call a super regional or a national carrier, I'm going to tell you that pre-pandemic, especially in the last 5 years, as we've started to compete in the same way Alex was talking about for data science, software engineering talent, I think the perception of what it means to be an Ohio-based company was kind of one way. Alex, you kind of got in before I think everybody's figured it out. We were just challenged to really kind of find that talent. And I think the pandemic has kind of flipped the story a great deal. So I would say that over the last 10 years has been a bigger challenge for us, not in our core business, but in those parts of as our business has transformed through technology and data and analytics. That was, I think, increasingly a challenge. And I think it's flipped a bit for us now.
That's very interesting. Alex, you mentioned talent as one of the things that helped accelerate your decision to start looking around and the challenge of competing for talent in California. I'm curious, given some of the things that Lenny's talked about with regard to talent, how you found Ohio as a response or an answer to some of the challenges that you were finding in California with regard to talent.
We've been blown away by the success of our office in Columbus. So it was founded in mid-2019. And just probably maybe about a month ago, the size of the Columbus office has now exceeded the size of our San Mateo office. So we're a larger office, and not just a larger office. We've had our most significant new products over the past year are now being delivered by the teams in Columbus, and so I think the team was. We knew we needed to expand. We hoped we would be able to get something a solid presence in Columbus, and what we found is really just an amazing presence. And so we've hired. So a big part of that is our ability to hire, just as Wendy was saying, software engineers and machine learning scientists. And we found we've probably hired 50 engineers in that time, which for us that's a big number. Yeah. So we've been extremely impressed. There have been challenges. There are certain types of roles that we find actually more difficult to hire here. Product management is one of those roles. There's just the way that we approach it at Upstart is just a little bit different than kind of what's more predominantly done here. And so what we're doing there is trying to find, we're trying to find the people we can here, but if we can't find those people, we're trying to find boomerangers who maybe grew up here or went to school in the Midwest and now are on the West Coast. And there's a lot of reasons why the Midwest is a much more attractive place to be, especially during COVID times, but just generally. And so now what we're able to offer is a West Coast type job, but here in the Midwest. And so we get a decent amount of traction there with candidates that are people on the West Coast, but from this area and are looking to move back.
Yeah, that really has been a major theme in this sort of the second half and coming out of this post-COVID era. Folks really taking stock of the possibility of being able to live where they want to, as opposed to where they feel like they have to live. And I definitely see this, and this entire conversation really is a part of that. I'm curious, Jamie, for yourself. We talked a lot about talent and some of the challenges that are there and opportunities, certainly. I'm curious if you found some of the same sorts of things, or if there are other challenges and opportunities maybe that you think also might be worth underscoring.
Yeah, talent's definitely a big part of what we do as a professional services firm. Our product is our people, so making sure there's an availability of talent, but also caliber of talent is really important. So I would echo everything Alex said, and I would say there are a couple of things that I think have been really meaningful for us is as folks, particularly coming out of COVID, are thoughtful about work-life balance and a great place to live and recreational things. Columbus has been a great place from a cost of living standpoint. And I would say as we think about the kind of capability and talent standpoint, we've been able to hire folks, but we're hiring at similar volumes that Alex is talking about. And where we're looking to do cross-training, one of the things that I've been blown away about is the partnership in the business community. Folks from Jobs Ohio have connected us with local universities and other programs that help do cross-training and upskilling and things that help us, contribute to the talent market as well as kind of consume from it. And I think that partnership that happens here in Ohio, we see it even kind of commercially, in financial services with companies in the state partnering together to bring something to bear for their customer base. I think that's something really special and something that we look forward to in terms of continuing to grow here. But, we've been readily able to pull talent from San Francisco and Denver and New York and Chicago. And one of the things that I find is a challenge, but it's getting easier, is people's perception is different until they come here. And we get people in the state, in the city, and they walk around and we talk to them about all of the hubs of, Fortune 1000 companies and startups and kind of the angel and, startup community. And people are blown away by what's happening here. And I think one of the cool things over the last probably 5 years is I think that story is starting to get out. And the, Ohio piece is a really cool thing because people are like, great cost of living, awesome access to essentially 2/3 of the country in a day's drive or a single flight. And, a great hub for technology and partnership in the community. It's a really compelling package, I think, as we think about places to operate. So that's been, super important for us. But I think the challenge coming out of COVID that we've seen too is the digital acceleration that every company is having, right? And I know Alex and Wendy have seen this in their businesses. We've talked a little bit on this side, but the need for talent and the need for kind of centers of innovation across every business, I think, is something we're going to continue to see skyrocket. So that's where I think that community partnership thing is going to be even more key looking forward.
Yeah, you raise a really interesting point, and one I'd like to follow up with you a little bit more, if we could. Just the idea of that combination of partnership, and particularly the way that drives technological innovation. And I'm curious, between the mix of in-house innovation and the work that you're able to do with partners, just how are those two factors really helping to drive the capacity of your company to be innovative in a place like the Midwest?
Yeah, I think it's key. Our teams are inspired by those kinds of activities, right? Especially working in technology, understanding what those major unlocks are to be able to level up not only personal skill sets, but also to make kind of step function improvement in the business. Super important. With that kind of digital acceleration I was talking about, the competitive nature of how we all go to market is even more critical for innovation to not be a thing that happens every so often, but to be a part of that build, learn, innovate kind of cycle for the way that we advance products and the way that we advance services. So it's bred into the way that we operate. And so I think having a startup community within what I would call like communities of practice out in the community, where folks get together and talk about challenges and talk about new tech and tinker on the side. Those kinds of things are, I think, really important to building the infrastructure, I think, for innovation across the city. But I would say we're seeing that be an important part of both our talent strategy, but also the way that we think about building products. And so we continue to invest in, research and, as Alex was talking about, things like machine learning and AI and things that help us kind of activate those learnings on a rapid basis. Kind of all goes back to how do we find the right talent? How do we partner with universities and that broader community to make sure there's this influx of both capability, but also energy? And there's just a lot of that, I think, that we've found here.
Excellent. Alex, you were name checked here just a second ago, so I thought maybe we'd go ahead and turn to you on the similar question. I thought interesting that you were able to pool a lot of your own resources in helping determine the Midwest as a place for relocation for Upstart. I'm just curious in terms of what you found there in terms of the capacities for partners, as well as obviously the in-house innovation that you own do. What have you found in terms of the ability to leverage partnerships to drive your own innovation and the work that you do from the Midwest?
We're an AI technology. We're providing this AI technology to banks to apply it to lending. So our model of innovation is really a technological innovation. Like we are taking this new technology, which is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we're applying it to a space where things are done in a completely different way. Essentially, like predicting default risk. And so banks today might use 20 to 30 variables in a model to predict how risky you are. They're heavily dependent on FICO score, which is something that was invented in the 1980s. And what we're doing is applying this machine learning model that takes more than 1,600 variables to predict someone's likelihood of default. And what we find is that we can predict it in a dramatically better way, which creates all sorts of business wins. We can increase approvals, so we can find people who the bank, they thought they were risky, but we can see they're not risky, so we can increase the approval for the bank, which is grow their portfolio. And what that looks like for consumers is increased access to credit. So people who couldn't get a loan at a bank before can now get a loan. So that's sort of like the type of technology that we're creating. And so as it relates to Columbus, what we need for innovation is we need research scientists. We need PhDs who understand that technology and can push it further and push it into new areas. So it's both a combination of real technical expertise and then kind of this experimental culture that we have. So we're doing all sorts of experiments, and some of them might be things like A/B testing experiments, and some of them might be deep research projects that might look more academic than what you would think of in a business setting. So what Columbus has for us is a lot of that kind of talent, and in an institution that's pumping out a lot more. And so that's been a huge help for us here. Our machine learning team is I think just as big here as it is in the Bay Area now. So I think it's that side, and then again it's the idea that there is talent there that wants to be somewhere like the Midwest, and Ohio gives us that option for them.
Interesting. Wendy, I'm curious, coming from where you are, from the world of insurance, how does the partnership question and the idea of partnership fueling innovation question arrive for you in the work that you do as an insurance firm?
I've been kind of listening to kind of what it sounds like from two companies that are, I think, really branded a lot better in the marketplace around the idea of innovation. Because I was thinking, David, like, why are we so challenged for talent? I think it's the branding of the insurance industry itself. People just don't see us as this hotbed of, data and analytics and technologies. We do have a lot of legacy technology that we are, that we're burdened by, that we have to make these leaps ahead. So I think that's part of our mission is to, help the market, the talent market, understand really what goes on in an insurance company. I can tell you that I have not spent my career lifetime in this industry. I've only been in this industry for the last 6.5 years. And if I had understood earlier in my career how interesting this industry is, I might have spent more time in it. It's a pretty exciting and dynamic place. And so part of what we're doing as a company, prior to my coming on board, my boss made the commitment to be part of this innovation corridor in Cincinnati that is being stood up, under the aegis of the University of Cincinnati and a big partnership of a lot of the institutions here. So prior to my coming on board, we committed to being part of the 1819 Innovation Hub. We lease space, and it's our offsite innovation venue here. And one of the things that is really important for us is to really kind of open up the organization, because we are up in Fairfield, which is kind of remote. It's 25 miles away from Cincinnati. So we now have this kind of like other hub that we go to, and we run our innovation ventures there. And our innovation ventures are our way of taking our business challenges and opportunities, using our own associates to actually work on these problems. And, I was thinking about what has it meant for us to be here. We knew that we needed help in kind of creating an innovation program. And we looked at companies in New York that I was more familiar with. Well, it turned out that we found a talent right here in our own backyard that I can honestly say is world class. They stood up a program for us. They've been partnering with us for the last 2 years. And I've just been amazed, right? I have to say, I just thought I didn't need to import that world-class understanding of innovation methodology and toolkit. The other thing about being at the university is we've been able to establish academic partnerships. One of our first research efforts with the university is in the area of computer vision, where we're partnering with the departments of engineering and design. That's another great thing at the University of Cincinnati, is this world-class design institution, which for us is so critical, because as an industry, I think we've lagged a bit in terms of really understanding customer experience and what that looks like in the real world as well as the digital world. So it's just brought a more of an outside in to our organization. It's kind of opened us up, I think, blown out some of the cobwebs, and has really, Jamie, you talked a lot about the energy. It's really energized us. And I'll close by saying we've also started to source some of the talent that's sitting in other companies, the Krogers, the FIS. I'm really excited that we have a new person joining us who did operational innovation at Kroger and was also working at FIS in the financial institution, coming into our organization. So I think that kind of cross-pollination of talent it is really important and exciting because there are, much bigger organizations than we are based here that really kind of source their talent from around the globe. And for us to be able to connect and be viewed as a, part of that innovation ecosystem in the Cincinnati area is really important to our company.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about this interesting idea of that sort of uncovering talent in the backyard, as well as unique types of talent that might only be in places in the like Ohio and in the Midwest for any number of reasons. But before I did, I wanted to touch on, Jamie, you had made a point about something you were seeing in financial services, and I wanted to maybe touch on that right quick since you just brought that up.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing to kind of build on what Wendy's seeing is this culture of experimentation that we're seeing across financial services right now, which is our largest vertical. And it's manifesting in a lot of different ways. We have an asset management firm that we work with that is really focused on a mechanism to test how they better capture digital leads and access new pools of investors. And so they're using rapid prototyping to figure some of those things out. We're working with a top 10 bank that's figuring out how to better serve their customers through their mobile app with the same type of rapid prototyping kind of concept. And to Alex's point, it really leverages these, really experienced researchers with UX design and engineering, and it helps kind of insulate a little bit some of the technology that has existed for a long time, the industry that Wendy was talking about, and be able to, start to vet out what should that change be. And so I think we're seeing that trend really broadly, and how folks are organizing to innovate is rapidly changing, I think, in this industry, and a really exciting thing. I think as folks are thinking about talent, folks coming into the space, it's a really great time, I think, to work in the industries we're talking about.
Certainly. And I want to go ahead and sort of follow up with that, and again, the question or the tail end of what Wendy was saying with regard to types of opportunity, and just thinking about the diversity of the country, the fact that the various sorts of resources in different places. And I'm curious the degree to which some of the opportunities that you've been able to take advantage are almost uniquely Midwest, that there are things that you would maybe not have been able to take advantage of. Again, Alex mentioned competition for talent, but that's one of the things I'm particularly curious about, both the things that you uncovered that you didn't know were right beside you, as Wendy mentioned, but also the possibility of, wow, only in Ohio, from a way of saying, in terms of some of the things you've discovered. And Jamie, we'll stay with you, and then we'll go to Alex to see some of his insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, access to companies in the same space. I think the knowledge sharing that happens locally in the state, I think, is huge. It's a hotbed, I think, for this industry. It's been a hotbed for innovation in this industry, I think, as we look at, folks like Alex's company, departments and business units like what Wendy's running, but then also like the Roots of the world and folks like that are here. I think it just gives this space for folks to talk about what's going on and have access to what's going on, not just through kind of talent swapping, but also through kind of leadership conversations, which definitely happens. And I think there's something about that sharing that is uniquely Midwestern, around, rising tides lifts all boats a little bit. And I think, access to talent is a big part of that. The number of universities in this state, I think, is a well-kept secret. But there's just tons and tons and tons of folks that are coming out that are capable of contributing to this. And then I think access to markets is another big piece. So those are three things that come to mind quickly for me that feel, uniquely Ohio in terms of, what's able to happen. And I guess the last point I would make is, the research institutions that are here that spur that innovation in the community. Folks like Battelle, like what an awesome organization to have locally that kind of sets the foundation for innovation and research and business partnership and all that. So I think those are some really cool aspects that, makes Ohio a great place to call home for a company.
Interesting. Alex, yourself, your thoughts on that sort of, for lack of a better phrase, that only in Ohio type of a feature that you think makes particularly worth a place to be starting a business?
Yeah. I'll build on some of the points Jamie was making. So I think, we've hit on to Ohio State and sort of the colleges here and how important that's been in the talent that we've been able to hire. And then also the startup ecosystem. So I don't even know that was on our radar, and I think even a couple of years ago, it's not nearly what it is today. But if you think about, Drive Capital and Root, and Beam and Path Robotics and sort of all we've got a very solid and growing number of successful startups in the area, and that's just creating more talent for us. So I think that's been a positive surprise for us. And then we think those are the two that I think are sort of the most important for us so far. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Excellent. Wendy, yourself, in terms of that, again, the only in Ohio, some of the more unique aspects of in terms of the opportunities there that you might not find in other areas.
For me, what I've been most impressed by coming here is the access that you have to, and I don't want to sound, but it's almost like because the pond's a little smaller, you feel like a bigger fish. Like when you pick up the phone and you call, you can talk to the head of the business school and they take your call, and you can go, prior pandemic, you can go meet for coffee and talk about what you're doing, and, connecting to the entrepreneurship programs for us at universities like UC, Xavier, Miami, who are in our backyard and who really want to partner. I think there's this, Jamie, I don't want to say that on the coast we're not as warm and inviting, but there is something, there's a kind of an excitement and a kind of openness to forging those partnerships. And I don't know if it's more recent, but experimenting. Like, okay, well, we have this program and it works this way, but if you need it to be that way, well, we could work with you on that. We could flex around that. And I think that those opportunities, I feel are somewhat unique. I was in New Jersey before, and we were in Princeton's backyard, and it was a little harder to get on the phone with the head of the business school at Princeton, even though I was with Munich Re. So, for me, that access and just right now what's going on, the acceleration of innovation within the state, you can feel it. I can feel it down here in the southwest corner of the state in Cincinnati. So it's happening here. I think it's happening, across the state, which is quite exciting and unique, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I just add?
Yes.
Yeah. So we see the exact same things that Wendy was mentioning, and just in some of the ways that we can see it, just sort of in our numbers, are just a couple. Like when we are like offer to close rates, and we can compare the Bay Area and Columbus. That's what we're looking at both. And what we see is in Columbus, our offer to close rate is almost 100%. And what we see in the Bay Area is that it's more like 50%. So there's just, there's the war for talent there is just so significant. And it's not, someone's not getting an offer from one company, they're getting an offer from 5 companies. And so that's been just a real advantage of this area. And then also retention. Like we see the same thing on the retention side. So in the Bay Area, if you're in demand talent, it's a revolving door. Like you're going to a new company every couple of years. And here in Columbus, we haven't been around all that long, like just maybe almost a couple of years. But we're not seeing nearly the attrition that we see in the Bay Area.
I would build on that and say the same thing. I think our attrition is something like a third of what the industry standard is because of our strategy to be in college towns. And it's been huge for both retention as well as attraction, like you said.
Yeah, I think it's a point that you've all echoed that's really worth underscoring. I think sometimes the large fish in a small pond metaphor is sometimes not one that's really, I think, fully given its due. And I know in a lot of instances people talk, for example, a lot of the conversation about college expense and going to the most expensive schools, and folks starting to increasingly realize that you can get fantastic, if not better, education and almost always better opportunities to participate in different things at the state school or at the smaller institution. I know that was certainly my experience, that things I got to do at a small college that I never would have gotten to do if I'd gone to a huge university. And I think maybe some of the same is true for folks looking for opportunities in places that are maybe not as commonly thought of as places having great opportunities like the Midwest. I'd like to say just a little bit longer on this talent issue, because I think it's a really interesting one, both in terms of, I won't say surprise, but being pleasantly discovering some of the talent that's available in the Midwest, while at the same time seeing if there are talent needs that you would like to see filled. I'm curious in terms of the homegrown talent that's there. What are you seeing that's there that you really find that's particularly good? What is it about the folks who are in Ohio with that talent who decide to stay, as opposed to those who sort of want to leave the farm and go off and try their fortunes on the big city? I'm sort of curious about those experiences. And then at the same time, I'm curious about those who have had that big, maybe your employers, your employees rather, your partners, who have had that West Coast experience, and some of the thinking that went into them in terms of saying, I've done this, I've had enough of this, I want a little bit better quality of life, I want a different look, but I still want to do this great innovative work that I'm doing. And maybe, Jamie, we'll start with you on that. Sort of looking at those two different pools of talent and what you see as somebody working with both.
Yeah, I think from the folks that have gone to school or grown up in Ohio that want to stay, there's a huge pool of those folks. And I think, we typically have a pretty large internship class a few times a year. And it's been easy for us both to find folks from local universities, but also folks that are perhaps from Ohio that have gone to school somewhere else that are looking to, come back and plant roots again. So that's definitely been something that we've had access to. I think from not the university talent pool, but from the broader talent pool, there are folks for our apprentice program we've been able to hire, and folks from the broader community that we've been able to send through partnerships with local training companies and things like that to kind of be able to bring in. And so we're finding talent, from university, from self-taught, in engineering, software programming. You find that a lot too, that some of that knowledge can come from university, but it also can come from other places. So we see a good mix of that here. I think from bringing folks from somewhere else to here, we've had pretty good luck with that as well, from all places around the country. And I think a big part of that is the cost of living, the ability to, earn an awesome wage, work on great innovative projects. And I think another thing too is when folks are thinking about bringing their partners and their spouses and their families, there's jobs for those folks readily to be able to pick up in the same way. And I think that's an important part of relocation that, we've been able to, have here, having, one of the top zoos in the country, having, science and innovation museums, having a really, I think, awesome kind of, community culture around, festivals and, art exhibits and things like that. That's huge, I think, in terms of being able to bring people here. But I think, as Alex was talking about the startup community and the funding that is happening, I think here in Ohio, it's creating excitement. I would guess that as we're reaching out to folks on the coast from other places in the country, he said 5 offers a person. I would bet folks are getting quite a bit of offers from Ohio. And I think that starts to tell a story about the vibrancy of the business community and the opportunity that's happening here. And I think that kind of collective vibe that we're all putting out into the space, I think it has an effect on people saying, hey, I went to school there, I might have family here, I have some connection, I want to give that a shot. And the ability to work remote, with the cost of living that we have here in the awesome community, I think we're going to see a lot of people that are working for companies that are from all over that make Ohio, make Columbus, make Cincinnati, make Cleveland, make all those places home, even if they're working for a company that is elsewhere. And that, I think, builds a talent pool that we'll all have access to that is pretty exciting as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely want to turn to Alex on this question as well. I just wanted to make a note as we were passing the halfway mark for those of you who are listening to our presentation, that if you do have any questions, if you didn't note at the outset, it's an interactive presentation. So we do have a few questions that have come in. Certainly, if you've got a question or even a comment or an insight about your own experience, your own curiosity about some of the things that our guests are talking about, please feel free to go ahead and share that, and we'll take those up in maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. Alex, let's turn to you about that. As again, you have a very interesting perspective as Ohioan who's returned in terms of some of the things that are keeping homegrown talent in Ohio at home, and some of the things that are drawing talent from the coast to Ohio.
Yeah, I think so. When I was growing up here, I wanted to work in high tech. and there was no, that wasn't an option in Columbus. And so, I went off to the West Coast, and what we're seeing, lots of people who, are coming out of Columbus State or Ohio State, and they want to get into the high tech industry, and what they're figuring out that actually is here. And so we get a lot of people that are realizing that you don't have to move away if that's the type of work or the type of industry that you want to be in. And then we're also, we hire, we're in the financial services space in Columbus. There's a lot of financial services, like, right. Chase has an enormous office here. And we're finding great people that, may have been at Chase for a long time, so it is a little bit of, like, we do have, the cultures are very different, and the style and pace of work is a bit different. So we're trying to figure out ways to screen for the people who are more interested in looking for that versus those that may not know that. Right. So that's been somewhat of a challenge, but there's been a lot, there's talent on both sides, both people who they've got that drive to get into high tech, and they now can see that they can get that here in Columbus, or people who maybe haven't been from that background, but now see that it's here and think that it's interesting and it's a better fit for their personality. On the recruiting back side, our sales pitch is almost exclusively like get West Coast work, but get it in Ohio. And we're usually messaging people that know what it means to live in Ohio. And it's almost always, the people who are interested in that are almost always people who are getting to the stage of life where they're having kids, and the things that appeal to them about the West Coast, as you get older and you get a family, those things can become more challenging. And so that's the type of profile that we see. We get a lot of success with that type of profile. And yeah, like it's definitely been an active recruiting sort of strategy for us, and it's been a successful one.
Excellent. Wendy, yourself, in terms of, again, looking at the sort of two talent pools sort of broadly defined in terms of the domestic talent there in Ohio, what it is that's keeping those folks, those talented folks in Ohio wanting to continue to still do work there, and those folks who are in other places, as you yourself were, who decided that the Midwest was the place they wanted to be to do their creative work.
So, I'm going to start with the fact that I think we almost have in our company and our industry the inverse problem. We have extremely long tenured people. And I think that what being part of an innovation ecosystem has meant for them, and what we're doing inside of our company to kind of open ourselves up to work in some new ways, is it has, I think, enabled some of them to think that they are competitive on a more world-class stage than they might have thought. It's really kind of, and I think we've been able to unlock certain talent within our own organization, which I think has been incredibly important, because I think part of the reason that a person who is from Ohio might have chosen to work for us in the past is because they knew that they could be long tenured and they could be here. And that meant certain trade-offs in terms of the type of work that you would get to do. But now I think that trade-off isn't there so much anymore. And I think that's also why we've created an opportunity set that's a lot more attractive. I'm really rather proud that our team has recruited our first international candidate to come in, who's moving from South Korea to join us as our head of external innovation. He was with MetLife in Singapore at their Lumen Labs. And, I don't know that he would have necessarily thought that, I don't know if 5 years ago our company would have had a position that was attractive enough to somebody who had a very different background than we're used to having. But it's the opportunity set here, even within more traditional companies, because of how we've had to flex in order to meet all those changes that are going on in the marketplace, which have accelerated incredibly as a result of the pandemic. The digitization of everything, and new ways of working, new ways of interacting with within our organization, with our partners and with our customers, I think has really just kind of created a different environment. So I think that our industry, this more traditional industry, is, I hope we're going to be a stiff competitor for Jamie and Alex in the next 5 years for talent. That's our goal.
That's a worthy one, a worthy one. We're taking a look towards the top of our time. We've got a little bit of time left, and I do want to save some time for the questions and so on. But I did want to talk about one topic, which we actually haven't talked a great deal about, oddly enough, and that's COVID and its impact on this trend in particular. We did talk to the degree to which COVID sort of heightened the idea of the, whether you want to call it the work from home or the work from anywhere, and how there's a general trend in a lot of places out of some of the major cities, the really, really big cities, the New Yorks and the San Franciscos, to other places. I'm curious how COVID has impacted this particular trend, and in terms of what you all have seen in your own businesses, in your own communities. And again, we'll start with you, Wendy, and go to Alex and Jamie, both in terms of the work you do, but also in terms of this trend of seeing people wanting to come to places like Ohio as a result of their experience during this crisis. Wendy, what do you think about that?
Well, the crisis was really good for a person who was pretty new to the company leading innovation, I have to tell you, because things that were on our roadmap, but we could, we'll get to it, all of a sudden became imperative. You know, we have to do virtual inspections because nobody wants us to physically come into their home or business premises. In fact, you know, so we had to move from 0 to being able to do it, and we were able to do that in 8 weeks. This was unprecedented for us as a company that we would be able to move that fast. We had certain things that were still paper-based, you know, and you had to kind of go physically hand it to somebody. Well, you know, we had to become digitized in that way. So I have to say that for me, as a person leading innovation, some of the work that probably would have taken us longer, and the innovation approach, you know, this whole, you know, rapid experimentation, testing, starting small, growing out, it took it from a concept and a theory to this actually works, right? This actually works. It helps us get where we're going. So I think that part was good. And then our company, we went, like many people, we went home on Friday, and on Monday we were entirely remote. And we were a company where, you know, it's like 3,500 people showed up at headquarters in Fairfield every day. So I think if you had said that we could do this, and our IT department was awesome, they transitioned us over instantly. And I think it proved to us how resilient our culture is, that it wasn't really, it really wasn't just that we were all in person. That wasn't really what our culture was about. And I think the interesting thing for us is going to be, and Jamie and Alex and I were talking about before, transitioning to a more hybrid world, where I think that's the next hill for us all to take, figuring that out. But I think in terms of our ability to work with talent, the way the talent also wants to show up to us will be enhanced by our ability to work. Because I think people do also, they want to get together in person, but they want to be able to continue to work if it's better at sometimes for them to be working from another environment. So I think this is just going to make our ability to work with the best talent from anywhere, it's just going to increase that.
Yeah. Alex, would you agree in terms of the impact of COVID on this particular trend of folks looking to relocate to different sorts of places than have been traditionally the places where you had to go in order to innovate in technology?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for us, you know, we have an office, two main offices, San Mateo and then Columbus. And for us, you know, similar to what Wendy was saying, it was an overnight shift. All of a sudden, everyone was instantly working from home. And some of the positives of that was that it instantly leveled the playing field in terms of location. So, you know, we've got, for me, like, you know, most of our executive team is in San Mateo. And so instead of and we're kind of an active debate-like company culture. And, you know, if you're the one person on the television screen and everybody's in the room sort of, you know, debating, that's a real challenge. And so for me, there was a real positive to being kind of on a level communication playing field in terms of the rest of the company. And we were really concerned about productivity and like, is productivity go down? And we really didn't see that. We saw people going the extra mile to communicate what they needed to communicate to get things done. A lot of things needed to happen quickly. And things have sort of moved into this like new normal of being in this remote environment. And so we were very pleasantly surprised with the way that the company responded and how work got done. And then like when he was saying, the fact the impact on company culture and just our culture sort of surviving through that. And so now I think all of us have been struggling with like, well, what do we do now? And how do we want to go back into this new world? And we've been, thinking about like a hybrid model of, I guess the struggle for us is on one hand, we want to keep the really intentional high value time, face-to-face time, just the type of connection that you really can't get through Zoom. We want to preserve that in some way, but also we want the advantage of being able to hire people, on a nationwide scale. And so we're trying to figure out that balance. I think we had a plan of going back into the office, like 3 days a week and at home 2 days a week. And but I think our company is still trying to figure out where exactly we want to fall. And I think the more time goes on, the more we think we want to be leading the charge there versus sort of being behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie, in terms of your experience with regard to COVID, and again, its particular impact on trends of companies wanting to relocate out of those big metropolitan areas into some of maybe those lesser discussed metropolitan areas like those in the Midwest.
Yeah. First, I'll start with a little bit of how it's kind of impacted our business. One of the things that we saw from a trend line standpoint, and I'll just share some facts that'll be kind of preaching to the choir a little bit, but I think it puts in context the massive change I think that we've seen in the industry. So during COVID, financial apps had 45% global growth through 2020. We had 91% of Americans who banked virtually over the course of the pandemic, across demographics. 40% said that they're likely to switch who they bank with to get better digital tools. On the insurance side, 78% of respondents to an S&P survey who purchased insurance coverage online in 2020, which is almost double from previous years. Mm-hmm. And these trend lines that we're seeing, not just in financial services, but more broadly, the trend line is intended to continue. And I think that's something that's impacted our business in a big way for a couple of different reasons. One, we help companies do that. And we've seen kind of a bifurcation of what that help looks like. The first being, we know we need to do this. We want to build a team. Help us do this. Help us improve our processes, build alongside us. And then we have another set of companies who are the speed that they're desiring is better for, I'll call it like a team in the box model. Help us execute on this quickly, because it's no longer a decision of if we should do this, but how fast can you get this done? And so we've seen this kind of rapid continuation of that, digital acceleration and desire for support services, both from a create standpoint and a help us figure out how to do this, how to continually innovate. And so I think we're seeing a big piece of our business that is that which continues kind of our growth, I think, in all the communities that we operate. One of the other things, though, that we're seeing is what I said a little bit earlier around those partnerships. We're seeing, local firms partner with each other to meet that market demand. And they might serve a different part of the customer segment. And instead of it making sense for folks to build on their own, they're Nationwide announced a partnership with another financial services firm, I think about a month ago, of the same sort of thinking, which is, okay, it doesn't make sense for us to build this service. It makes sense to partner. It already exists. We're going to serve our customers better. And I think we're going to continue to see kind of a bifurcation in that way too, which is, what's the right way for us to bring this value to market for our customers? And I think there's a talent implication to that. There's a community partnership implication to that. And there's certainly an innovation, piece of that. Wendy is a hot commodity, I think, in this industry right now, because the way that the industry continues to evolve and innovate and stay relevant through this demand, I think is key. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and being able to have talent in a place that is low cost, because as we continue to think about investment in technology, having the staff to do that is capable, but also where it makes sense from a financial standpoint, from a company standpoint. Those are things that we have to continue to balance, I think, to make sure that as we grow those things and serve customers, it's in a way that's scalable and, makes sense from a bottom line margin standpoint as well.
Very, very interesting. We're coming up toward the end of our time, and I've got a couple of questions, and I'm thinking in the interest of time, what I might try to do is sort of amalgamate them into one general question, and hopefully that won't upset anybody who doesn't feel like their question was sufficiently addressed. And again, I'll ask each of you maybe to take up the topic, and it's really just simply, if you are a company or an entrepreneur for that matter, and you're thinking along the lines that some of you have thought about, is like there's opportunities in the Midwest that we could be taking advantage of that might enable us to do the work that we're doing in some other location better. What advice would you give them? What is the first step if you were thinking about making that kind of move or transition? And Jamie, we'll start with you. We'll go to Alex and finish with Wendy in terms of just your general top of mind thoughts of what would be a first step or two for a company and entrepreneur who is interested in thinking about making that transition.
Yeah, I think one of the great resources that we have in all of our communities across Ohio and then represented in Ohio are our economic development partnerships, Jobs Ohio, One Columbus here locally. Those folks have been awesome for creating connections, for helping us to know, what programs are there to leverage for growth and, talent programs and things like that. So I would look for public partnership and what exists already, because there is a wealth of help and expertise there to help make sure that those connections are available to help accelerate some of that. You don't have to recreate it on your own in many, many instances.
Excellent. Alex, your thoughts in terms of suggestions or advice you might give to a company or entrepreneur thinking about making the move?
Yeah. I think some of it we've touched on. I think in my mind, number one thing is think about the type of talent you need, and whether or not you think Columbus will have that talent. And I think what we're showing is that if the type of talent that you need is sort of software engineering or high tech talent, we're sort of proof points to say that we've got that. But you might need other types of talent, and so I think talent is by far and away the number one thing to be thinking about. And then I think the number two thing is just partnerships, relationships. In the city are the types of companies that you need, that are part of your value chain, or that you would want to do a partnership with. Are they in Columbus, or are they within a close drive of Columbus? And then I think the third one would be just sort of like funding. How are you looking to raise capital for your company? And do you see Columbus as having sort of some resources there? And I think we've got Drive, we've got a handful of other VCs here in Columbus. So there's actually some at least in the Midwest, very solid resources in that area. So yeah, it's not an accident that Root and Drive are here like that. This is an insurance hub, and that's why all of these insurance companies are coming to Columbus to start, because they're looking at those three things, and sort of the equation makes sense. So those are just a few that I would consider.
Excellent. And Wendy, to wrap it up, what would you say in terms of advice or suggestions you give to a company or entrepreneur who's looking to the heartland for a place to really take their business to the next level?
I'm going to put a pitch in for Cincinnati.
There you go.
In addition to Columbus, no dissing Columbus. But I would say, what's really great, I'm going to go back to you. If you want to, you can get a meeting with anyone you want to get a meeting with here. And that is so important. It's just, you could probably go 2 degrees of separation, and you will be connected to someone that you want to be connected with. And you can actually, I agree with Alex. I think the opportunities for partnerships are incredible, and they're a lot easier to establish here. Mm-hmm. So I think to really look for that, and just pick up the phone and consider Cincinnati as well as Columbus and Cleveland, the major hubs here, because they're all great places to set up or to move a company.
Absolutely. I remember visiting Chicago one of the first times. My wife's from Chicago, and I remember I grew up on the East Coast, so I'm certainly familiar with relatively having your big cities close together. But I'll never forget being on the highway and just seeing all of the signs pointing to all of the different places that you could get to. And it just seemed bizarre to be in Illinois and basically having the signs that was telling you, we'll take you to almost anywhere in the Midwest, turn left, right, wherever you want to go, we'll take you there. And that was really sort of an impacting thing to just realize just how, as you mentioned, how being in the Midwest really does put you in very close proximity to so much of the country, more than you might even think until you're really there. Fantastic. Well, again, we've run out of time for our presentation today, as I suspected that we might. So much to talk about, so much to cover. Really appreciate the insights that all three of you have shared with us. I think our attendees have enjoyed it as well. They'll have the opportunity to review those insights on demand later. For those of you who maybe didn't catch the entirety of the presentation, will be available on demand for those of you who have registered for it. So definitely go ahead and take up on that. But it'll also give you the opportunity to learn more about the work that our three guests are doing. So on behalf of Finovate, I want to thank Wendy, I want to thank Jamie, and I want to thank Alex for their insights and experience. I want to thank Jobs Ohio for making the presentation possible. And again, thank you for being a part of the Finovate FinTech Halftime Review. We'll see you next time. Have a fantastic day and a great weekend.